Sam, it is so lovely to see you again. You run one of the biggest, certainly one of the fastest growing crypto exchanges. Crypto does have a reputation for intense volatility. Lots of people are critical of that fact, given that some people say it is supposed to be a store of value. We've had a massive downdraft in crypto prices this week. What's going on?
Yeah, so it's certainly been volatile. And, there's sort of two ways that you can reach, a lower volatile state. One is you can have something which is not a free floating currency. In crypto, that would be a stable coin, blockchain based token that is just backed by a US dollar or some other asset, and its price is just pegged to it. But other than that, if you're going to be just a market force dependent asset, you're not going to stop being volatile unless you have sort of a mature, slowly changing marketplace. And that's certainly not true of crypto right now. It's had, wild up and down swings, although on net, a lot of price appreciation. And I think that is sort of a consequence of the fact that it's a really quickly growing asset class and a quickly changing asset class. And, you can't have that level of change and growth without having a good degree of price volatility along the way. I don't think it's going to really see, a huge slowdown in volatility until the world's made up its mind on what its long-term role is really going to be. But, we saw a huge price increase over the first quarter of the year. I think a lot of this driven by the anticipation of large financial institutions getting involved in the crypto ecosystem. And it is, in fact, the case that most of the financial institutions we talk to say they are looking to probably get involved somehow in crypto. We'll see what that means exactly. They don't know. It's exploratory. But there really does seem to be an incoming wave from that. A lot of people got very long in anticipation. They lost a little bit of a race. Before that money actually came in and filled out the capital base, there's a little bit of a downtick, and that liquidated many of the long positions.
Just to step back for a second, I mean, you mentioned this idea that the world hasn't yet agreed on the use cases for crypto. What are they to you? What do you see crypto as being useful for or beneficial for?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'll have to see what ends up really, getting legs and running. But I think in potential, people talk about sort of two use cases: the means of transfer and the store of wealth. I'm going to put aside the store of wealth. I think it very well may be a big thing. It's a pretty subjective thing in terms of what causes that to work. But I think on the means of transfer side, you can sort of fool yourself into thinking that it's easy to transfer money right now if you happen to have Venmo and be sending it to a friend who also has Venmo. But as soon as you leave that regime, it all of a sudden it's quite difficult. As soon as you leave the regime of two people with the same centralized service, just paper transferring money, when you're looking at international wire transfers, I mean, they can take days, they can take hundreds of dollars. Websites often don't even support them. You have to go physically to a branch to do them. There's a lot of messiness in the system. It takes 2 months for credit card transactions to actually settle, and for ACH transfers to actually settle. And so I do think that potentially crypto could be massively easier way to transfer value. It doesn't mean every iteration of it has been, but it certainly could be, and I think some versions of it are. And the other thing that I think has a ton of potential is when you look at smart contracts, and this is very speculative right now, but the ability to put arbitrary programs on a blockchain, I think is really cool and fascinating.
Now, FTX is based in Hong Kong. We've recently seen reports about China cracking down on various aspects of crypto trading and especially mining. How do you navigate what really seems like a bit of a landmine at the moment in terms of the regulatory or the sovereign responses to crypto?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And, right now we're seeing almost every jurisdiction in the world trying to figure out what their regime is going to be in crypto. You can count on one hand the number of jurisdictions that can tell you, look, this is our regime, this is our licensing regime, here's our regulatory regime, here's how it works. In almost every place, what you'll see, it says, I don't know, here's what we're doing for now. We're trying to figure out what our kind of crypto specific legislation is going to look like. Stay tuned, and we're getting in touch with industry participants. You've certainly seen a lot of activity coming out of China. There's been a lot of crackdowns recently, although historically there have been moves in both directions, from mainland. And I think that, that sort of has depended on a lot of different sort of specific and idiosyncratic conditions. Um, I, but one thing I would say is that FTX is an extremely geographically distributed exchange. No jurisdiction is more than about 10% of our revenue. And this is in contrast to most exchanges in crypto, not all of them, but most of them, which find the bulk of their activity coming from one place. We've put a lot of effort to being, as distributed and global as we can, and because of that, we have we have users in most jurisdictions. We have offices in a number, and we're going to have to see how things play out everywhere. But there sort of isn't one jurisdiction that stands out for us in terms of its significance to the business.
Now, you've been quite open about your own interest in altruism. And meanwhile, we've seen Bitcoin come under quite a lot of criticism recently over its energy use. Elon Musk obviously has been very vocal on that topic. How do you square your interest in crypto with a desire to make the world a better place?
Totally. So the first thing I'd say is that there is significant energy usage by crypto. I think some people will try to shoo away this question. I think that is being uh, too glib. I think it is a reasonable question to ask. I think some people are very doomy about the question, which I think is also not super reasonable. The truth is there is significant energy usage, but it is not it is not sort of like really out of line with respect to the amount of activity going on the blockchain. If you look at ratios of energy usage to economic activity on the blockchain, it is not that different than what you see in other industries. So the first thing I would say is this is not a uniquely crypto problem, but that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. It does matter. And I do think that any way that crypto can try and become more green is really important, especially as it starts to scale more. I think there's sort of two core ways of doing this. And we've been sort of trying to help on both. One of them, sort of the first one um, is just doing what you can to offset the impact. Whether it's through preventing deforestation, carbon removal, or other techniques, it is economically reasonable to do so, and we have pledged to do that. We've pledged to make FTX at least carbon neutral through offsets. And the second piece of this is that almost all of the energy usage goes to mining proof of work blockchains. Um, and there's a few different sort of security protocols that a blockchain can use. Proof of work is one, proof of stake is another. The energy guzzling is unique to proof of work, which is, in terms of major cryptocurrencies, only used by Bitcoin and Ethereum today, and soon will only be used by Bitcoin because Ethereum is switching to proof of stake. And so to the extent that a lot of the on-chain activity happens in any other blockchain, their energy usage is a really small fraction of what we're seeing today. And so, that doesn't mean that proof of work has to go away, but it just means that, you're likely over time going to see a lot of the high throughput transaction, volume happening on sort of the most efficient chains.
Can you just elaborate on that last point a little bit? What is the future of Bitcoin specifically, in your view, given that we have criticism around its energy usage, given we have criticism around its volatility? We seem to have abandoned all ambitions for it to become like an actual method of payment. Given its inflexibility and its, I guess, unwillingness to adapt to a different vision of crypto that seems to be out there, what's going to happen to it?
It's a good question. I don't know for sure. I don't want to make price predictions here. None of this is financial advice. But some thoughts on it. One piece of this is that you could imagine it becoming a primary store of value without becoming a means of transfer, so to speak. A sort of thing where it plays a gold-like role, where on a long time scale, without sending that many transactions through the network, you might acquire positions or put holdings in Bitcoin. But if you actually want to send $17 to your friend, you would use a different blockchain to send that transaction because it will be cheaper and more energy efficient and faster. Um, and so I think that's one plausible answer here. In terms of volatility, that's going to be really a property of any cryptocurrency that has the potential for price appreciation right now. Now, again, you can have a stable coin if your goal is just to hold dollars, but on a blockchain, right? And that's totally fine if that's what you're looking for. But if you are looking for an alternate asset to store wealth in an emerging industry, you can't really have that and have a chance at really significant growth without having significant volatility. That would be sort of violating the efficient market hypothesis. The last thing I'll say is that you could see, and you do see a fair bit of this growing, transfers of Bitcoin on other blockchains. And it's not really Bitcoin that's being transferred, it's a wrapper on it. It's a token which someone promises to let you swap out for a Bitcoin. But you could use that on shorter timescales to sort of move IOUs for a Bitcoin. It's almost like a stablecoin on a Bitcoin, but just running on a faster blockchain.
Okay, so crypto is all about innovation. What innovation in the space is getting you most excited at the moment?
Yeah, I think two things. The first, and this is sound a little dumb, but just making really good products. I think that is unbelievably important for the growth of the space. It gets highly underrated. People will say this is an amazing concept. It's going to kill the banks tomorrow, and that's not how the world works. Um, that is the real answer is in order to see. And first of all, a lot of this is going to be symbiotic with existing systems. But second of all, in order to see real massive adoption of blockchain technology and crypto assets, you're going to have to see beautiful GUIs, really wonderful customer experiences, well thought out product design. So that's just one thing. And then the other thing that I'll say is DeFi in particular, I think is really exciting and fascinating. I think it's going to be 20% of the space or something, which is a lot. But I do think that it in particular really needs to get its act together in terms of transaction cost and efficiency, in terms of product design, and in terms of the standard that applications are held to.
Who doesn't dream of beautiful GUIs? Speaking of that, actually, we've seen a lot of central banks get more interested in the digital currency space. What do you think about that development and the idea of the big incumbents of the financial system coming into a technology that was originally supposed to, cut them out from it?
They're all looking to do it. Everyone who you would think of as, wow, that player might get really disrupted by blockchain, almost every one of them has had that conversation internally. And most of them over the last year have gone from saying, hopefully it'll just die out, to saying, all right, looks like it probably won't die out. We got to start doing something here so that this is a part of our business, not disrupting our business. And you see with Netflix, and it's sort of, I think Netflix is an interesting company given how central it is to everyone's life these days, relative to how much the company itself is talked about. But Netflix disrupted itself. Like, it tried to disrupt an industry with online DVD deliveries, and then it realized that that wasn't actually the future, and quickly switched to actual just streaming. Ended up completely killing its own business model with its new business model, but successfully did that. And I think you see a lot of fintech players who are looking to disrupt finance, realizing that they need to be taking crypto seriously and integrating with it rather than being surprised when products roll out.